The arena was not silent. It was vibrating with a specific kind of restless energy that only exists when 20,000 people are waiting for an answer. For weeks, the rumors had swirled in the dark corners of the internet. There were whispers of a return, but not the kind of return that brings balloons and confetti. The screens went black. The massive monitors that usually flashed bright, neon colors were suddenly extinguished, plunging the stadium into a heavy, suffocating void. The only light came from thousands of cell phone flashlights, swaying like fireflies in a graveyard. Then the sound changed. The familiar, upbeat pop anthem that used to herald her arrival did not play. Instead, a low, distorted bass note rattled the floorboards, shaking the cameras at ringside. Smoke began to curl out from the entrance tunnel, not the white, puffy smoke of a hero, but thick, gray smog that clung to the floor. A silhouette stepped through the haze. The minimalist animation shows a stick figure standing at the top of the ramp, head bowed. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She stood perfectly still, a statue carved from resentment. The camera zoomed in, revealing the details that would break the internet in mere seconds. Gone were the bright teals and pinks of the girl next door. She was draped in dark leather that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. Heavy metal accents studded her shoulders, looking less like fashion and more like armor meant to repel human contact. The crowd gasped, collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the room. It wasn't a cheer. It wasn't a boo. It was pure, unadulterated shock. The woman they loved was gone. Something else had taken her place. As she began her slow walk down the ramp, the lighting shifted. Red floodlights bathed the arena, casting long, sharp shadows across the audience. The visuals should focus on her eyes. The past, her eyes were wide, seeking approval, sparkling with the joy of performance. Now, they were narrowed, framed by heavy, dark makeup that made her look like she hadn't slept in a decade. It was a look of exhaustion turned into a weapon. The commentary team, usually quick with superlatives and catchphrases, fell silent. There were no words to bridge the gap between who she was and who she had become. She walked with a predatory grace, no longer slapping hands with the fans over the barricade. When a young child in the front row reached out holding an action figure of her old self, she didn't even blink. She walked past, her gaze fixed on the empty ring, treating the adoration of the fans like it was nothing more than background noise. This was the moment the emotional weight settled in. It wasn't just a costume change, it was a rejection. By changing her aesthetic so drastically, she was telling a story without saying a single word. She was telling the world that the good girl who played by the rules had been eaten alive by the business. The leather, the fire, the darkness, it wasn't just a look. It was a funeral procession for her former self. The fans didn't know whether to cheer for the coolness of the aesthetic or mourn the loss of the hero they once knew. The confusion in the air was palpable, creating a tension that felt like a rubber band stretched to its absolute breaking point. The promo was over. She had stood in the center of the ring, stared into the hard camera, and dropped the microphone without speaking a word. The message was louder than any monologue. Now came the part the cameras didn't show. The walk through Gorilla, the area just behind the curtain where the producers and fellow wrestlers watched the monitors. Usually a return is met with applause from colleagues, high fives, and welcome back hugs. Tonight, the atmosphere behind the curtain was frigid. As she stepped through the heavy black drapes, the air felt thin. The stickman animation shows other wrestlers parting ways, creating a wide berth around her. They didn't approach her. The playful banter that usually filled the backstage area died down to whispers. Her transformation was so complete, so method, that it unsettled even the people who knew the script. She walked past the production desk, her leather boots clicking rhythmically on the concrete floor. A producer reached out, perhaps to give a note on timing or camera angles, but pulled his hand back at the last second. There was an aura around her, a force field of intense focus that warned everyone away. She wasn't playing a character anymore. She was inhabiting a dark emotion that felt dangerously real. The line between the performance and the person had blurred. She didn't stop to check the monitor or ask how the segment looked. She just kept walking deeper into the labyrinth of the arena hallways, carrying the weight of the silence she had created. It was a lonely walk, isolated by the very brilliance of her own reinvention. She had wanted to be feared, and in doing so, she had successfully severed the connections that once grounded her. She entered her private locker room and locked the door, The click of the lock echoed loudly in the small, sterile room. The animation shows her sitting down heavily on a folding chair in front of a lighted vanity mirror. The adrenaline of the entrance was fading, replaced by the quiet hum of the air conditioning. She looked at herself in the mirror. The black lipstick, the dark liner, the leather straps. For a moment, the facade cracked. She wasn't just a villain on TV. She was a woman who had to decide to kill a part of herself to survive in this industry. The old version of her, the one who smiled, who signed every autograph, who played by the rules, had been taken for granted. This new look was a shield, was a way to say, "You cannot hurt me if I don't let you in." She touched the cold metal studs on her jacket. They were sharp. She didn't wipe the makeup off immediately. She sat there, staring into her own eyes, trying to recognize the person looking back. The transformation wasn't just for the audience. It was for her. It was a necessary evolution. To reach the top of the mountain again, she had to shed the skin that was weighing her down. But there was a sadness in that room. The realization that innocence is the price of greatness. She picked up her phone. It was buzzing incessantly with notifications, social media exploding, friends texting, family asking if she was okay. She turned the phone over, screen down. Tonight, she couldn't be the friend, the daughter, or the role model. Tonight, she had to sit in the darkness she had invited in and learn to be comfortable there. While she sat in silence, the world outside was loud. As the moment she appeared on screen, the digital landscape fractured. Stickman animation depicts a map of the world, with lighting up nodes representing social media activity. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, they were all burning with the same image, her new evil face. The reactions were a chaotic mix of betrayal and awe. "How could she?" one faction cried. These were the fans who felt personally abandoned. They were the ones who had bought her bright t-shirts and believed in her message of positivity. To them, the leather and darkness felt like a personal insult. It was as if she had looked them in the eye and said their support wasn't enough. They posted videos of themselves reacting in shock, some even in tears, unable to process the tonal shift. But then there was the other faction, the ones who crave chaos. Finally, they typed, "She looks like a star." They analyzed every pixel of her new gear. They pointed out the symbolism in her entrance music, the way the fire mirrored her burning ambition. Fan art began to appear within minutes, dark, moody sketches of her new silhouette. The conversation shifted from "who is she fighting" to "who has she become?" This is the power of visual storytelling in wrestling. A single look had done more work than 3 months of interviews. The mystery was intoxicating. By refusing to explain herself, she allowed the internet to project their own fears and desires onto her. It became a canvas for their emotions. The algorithm loved her, feeding the images to millions, turning a wrestling segment into a global viral moment. Down in the arena concourse, a different kind of drama was unfolding. The merchandise stands are the heartbeat of the wrestling business, a direct barometer of fan sentiment. Before the show, the vendors were selling her old merchandise, bright colors, catchy slogans, headbands. The animation shows a long line of fans, parents with children, holding these items. But as the show ended and the crowd poured out of the arena, the mood at the merch stand changed. Kids who had walked in wearing her colorful shirts now looked confused. They tugged on their parents' sleeves, asking why their hero looked so scary. The parents didn't have answers. There is a specific melancholy to seeing a child realize that heroes are complicated. Meanwhile, the older fans were demanding the new gear. They wanted the black shirts, the dark imagery. As the vendors were overwhelmed, caught between the inventory of the past and the demand of the present. It was a physical representation of the transition. The bright, happy merchandise suddenly looked obsolete, like relics from a forgotten era, sat in piles, unwanted, while the idea of the new her was selling out before it was even printed. This commercial shift underscored the emotional one. It proved that in the world of entertainment, kindness is often a depreciating asset, while danger holds its value. The evil look wasn't just an artistic choice, it was a survival strategy. And as the arena emptied, the piles of unsold, colorful shirts remained as a colorful graveyard to the innocents that died that night. The following week, the world waited to see if the look was just a costume, or if the woman inside the costume had changed too. When the bell rang for her first match back, the answer was immediate and brutal. The animation should shift to a ring view. In the past, her style was technical, athletic, and respectful. She would lock up, trade holds, and play to the crowd for momentum. Not anymore. She moved with an efficiency that was terrifying. There were no wasted movements, no adjusting her hair, no posing. She wrestled like a street brawler who had learned martial arts. She targeted joints with a vicious precision. The sound design here should emphasize the impact, the heavy thud of bodies hitting the mat. The sharp intake of breath from the opponent. She didn't wait for the referee to break the holds. She held them until the count of 4, pushing the rules to their absolute limit. It was a display of frustration channeled into physical dominance. She wasn't trying to win a match. She was trying to hurt the person standing across from her. It was uncomfortable to watch. The commentary team stopped calling moves and started sounding concerned for the safety of the opponent. This was the evil manifesting in action. It wasn't about cheating. It was about a lack of empathy. She looked at her opponent not as a competitor, but as an obstacle to be removed. The crowd, usually loud, watched in a stunned hush. They were witnessing a systematic deconstruction of a wrestler, executed by someone they used to cheer for. The climax of this new attitude came when her opponent was revealed to be her former best friend. In the narrative of wrestling, this is the ultimate test of character. The stickman animation shows the two figures in the ring. The friend looks at her with pleading eyes, trying to reach the person beneath the leather and makeup. This isn't you, the body language suggests. But the protagonist didn't hesitate. There was a moment, a split second where the camera zoomed in on her face, and the audience hoped for a flicker of regret. A softening of the eyes, a hesitation in the fist, but it never came. She used their shared history as a weapon, countering moves only a best friend would know. It was a tragedy playing out in real time. The betrayal wasn't in the physical attack, it was in the emotional detachment. To hurt a stranger is one thing. To dismantle a friend with a blank expression is true villainy. When the match ended, she didn't stand over the fallen friend to gloat. She simply turned her back and left. That indifference was colder than any insult. It signaled that her past and everyone in it meant nothing to her now. She had severed the last tie to her humanity. The fans watched the friend weeping in the ring, while the new evil version walked up the ramp, never looking back. It was the definitive death of the character they knew, and the birth of a monster they couldn't look away from. The cameras turn off eventually. The lights go down, the fans go home, and the wrestlers return to the solitude of the hotel room. This is where the reality of the transformation hits the hardest. Chapter 5 focuses on the human underneath the superstar. The animation shows her in a dimly lit hotel room, scrubbing the black paint from around her eyes. Her skin is red and irritated from the harsh makeup. Her phone rings. It's her mother. She stares at the screen for a long time before answering. The conversation is one-sided. We only hear her responses. "I'm fine, Mom. It's just work." "No, I'm not angry." But her voice betrays her. It's tired. It lacks the spark it used to have. The character she is playing is bleeding into her real life. To play a villain so convincingly, you have to tap into real darkness. You have to find the parts of yourself that are jealous, angry, and resentful, and you have to amplify them. Doing that night after night takes a toll. She realizes during this phone call that she feels distant from the people who love her. They are talking to the girl she used to be, but she feels like a stranger in her own body. The evil look shocked the universe, but it isolated her heart. She hangs up the phone and sits on the edge of the bed, the silence of the hotel room pressing in on her. She has the fame, she has the headlines, but she has lost the warmth of connection. The video ends with a narration over a montage of her evil moments. We see the fire, the leather, the beatdowns, the shocked faces of the fans. It seems like a classic story of corruption, a hero falling from grace to gain power. But here's the twist. As the camera zooms in on her face one last time, looking fierce and terrifying in the ring, the narrator offers a different perspective. "We all thought she'd change to become a villain," the voice says softly.
Yes.
"We thought the leather and the darkness were a mask to hide the good person inside." The visual shows a flashback to her good days, smiling, high-fiving, but looking exhausted, eyes sad, forcing the happiness for the cameras. Then it cuts back to her evil face, focused, alive. "But we were wrong," the narration concludes. The smile, ... that was the mask. The polite girl who did what she was told. ... that was the lie. This darkness, this anger, this refusal to apologize. The Stickman character looks directly at the camera, eyes burning with intensity. This is the first time she has ever been truly real. The shocking look didn't hide who she was. It finally revealed it.